You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 30. Blood spilt at the Yuanyang Tower, a night walk to the Wugong Ridge. Wu Song reached Mengzhou in the evening, and went to Colonel Zhang's house. He found no one in the yard, and hid himself there. In a short time he heard a door open, and saw a groom enter the yard holding a lighted lamp. The groom hung up the lamp, and fed the horses with hay. He then took the lamp and returned to his room where he undressed, and went to bed. Just then a watchman outside struck his drum 4 times indicating that it was about 10 p.m. Wu Song went to the door of the man's room, and pushed the door a little. The groom heard the noise and called out, "I am just going to sleep, and it is still a little early for you to steal my clothes." Wu Song placed his halberd at the side of the door, and drawing a sword from his belt he again pushed the door. The groom could not stand this noise, so he sprang from his bed, seized a stick, and went to the door. Immediately Wu Song threw the door open, and stepping forward he seized the groom by the hair. The groom was surprised, and was about to cry out, but seeing the sword in Wu Song's hand could only beg for mercy. "Do you know me?" The groom recognized the voice of Wu Song, and said, "Elder brother, I had nothing to do with it. Please spare me. Tell me the truth, where is Colonel Zhang now?" "Colonel Zhang has been drinking wine all day with Jiang the door god, and Captain Zhang, and they are still drinking in the Yuanyang Tower." "Is that really so? If I do not speak the truth may I be seized by the foulest disease." "Then I cannot spare your life," said Wu Song, and he killed the man straightway. He then changed his clothes, and put on the new suit that Shuren had given him. He took a blanket off the groom's bed, wrapped his silver inside it, and placed it near the door of the room. He next lifted a door out of its socket, and placed it against the wall. He blew out the lamp in the room, and taking his halberd he climbed up the door and over the wall. It was a bright moonlight night. He soon found the door, and opened it from inside. He took the door reared against the wall, and put it back in its place. He then returned to the garden, and went toward the place when he saw many lamps. The light came from the kitchen, and looking inside he saw 2 women servants round the stove, and heard them grumbling, "We have been waiting on them all day, and yet there is no sign of their going to bed. The guests too have no sense of shame. They are almost drunk, and yet they would not go to sleep." While they were still murmuring, Wu Song leaned his halberd against the wall, drew his bloody sword, and pushing the door open, entered the kitchen. He seized one of the women by her hair, and cut off her head. The other woman seeing this was paralyzed with fear, her legs could not move, and she could not even scream. Wu Song killed her also, and then blew out the lamps. The moonlight shining through the windows enabled him to find his way about, and he crept towards the guest chamber. He knew the way. He found the ladder leading up to the Yuanyang Tower, and stealthily ascended. The men servants had already departed, as they were tired of having been on duty continuously all day long. Listening at the door Wu Song could hear the 3 men talking together inside. He heard Jiang the door god say, "I am obliged to you for taking revenge in my behalf, and I shall fully recompense you." "Who would like to do this but for my younger brother Captain Zhang," said Colonel Zhang. "Though you have spent much money, yet you have well disposed of that fellow. He must be dead by now. When those 4 men come back early tomorrow morning we shall know how the deed was done at the Feiyan Pool." "For men ought to be enough to kill 1 man, said Captain Zhang. "Well, I told those 2 followers of mine that they must get it done there, and report to us as soon as possible," said Jiang the door god. Upon hearing all this Wu Song's anger was enough to burst the sky, and pushing open the door he entered the room. There were about 5 lamps burning, and the moonlight entered the room through windows, so there was plenty of light. On the table were many drinking vessels. When Jiang the door god saw Wu Song he was so thunderstruck that his spirit flew away to heaven. Before he could stir Wu Song struck him in the face with his sword, and he fell down. Quickly turning round Wu Song struck at Colonel Zhang, who tried to evade the blow, and was cut in the neck. Captain Zhang had military training, and although he was almost drunk, Yet when he saw these two men struck down, he sprang to action, and seizing a chair raised it above his head, and advanced. But as he struck, Wusong took hold of the chair, and pushing it back upset the balance of Captain Zhang, who fell on the floor. In a second Wusong was on top of him, and cut off his head. Jiang the door god made an effort to get up, but Wusong kicked him so that he turned a somersault, and Wusong taking a sword cut off his head. Wusong then cut off Colonel Zhang's head. Taking a cup of wine from the table, Wusong drank it off at one draught. He then cut pieces of cloth from the clothing of the dead men, and dipping them in the blood that was covering the floor, he wrote 8 characters on the white wall: "The murderer is Wusong, the tiger slayer." He then took the silver utensils from the table, flattened them out with his foot, and placed them in his bosom. He prepared to descend the tower, but just then he heard the mistress below call out, "The officials are evidently drunk, so you two go upstairs and assist them down." As 2 servants came up the ladder, Wusong hid at one side of the door, and as they entered he saw that they were the same confidential servants who had arrested him a few days before. He was in the shade, and allowed them to pass, and then stepped out behind them. The servants were so astounded upon seeing the decapitated bodies lying there in pools of blood that they could not utter a sound. The hair on their heads stood on end, and they felt as though a bucket of icy water had been poured over them. As they turned to run away, they faced Wusong, who instantly killed one of them. The other one knelt down and begged for mercy, but Wusong declined to pardon him, and killed him also. The dead were lying all about the room, and blood had been spattered over everything. Wusong thought, "It is the same whether one kills only 1 or 100, the penalty of death is not more." He sheathed his sword, and went down the ladder. The mistress below asked what the noise upstairs was about. When she saw a big man advancing towards her, she called out, "Who is that?" Without saying a word, Wusong struck her a blow with his sword, and she screamed as she fell down. Wusong was surprised that his blow had not been effective, but upon examining his sword in the moonlight he saw that the blade had been dulled. It was no wonder that it would not cut any more. So he went into the kitchen, and exchanged the sword for his halberd. Upon returning to the tower he saw the sing-song girl Yulan with 2 children, and they were examining the corpse of their mistress. She called out in astonishment. He took his halberd, and drove it into Yulan's breast, and then also killed the other 2 children. Opening the door he entered the private apartments, and finding 3 women there he killed them also. Wusong soliloquized, "I have killed enough, and will now get away." He went to the stable where he had left his things, and taking the silver cups from his bosom, he made them into a bundle with his other things. Holding his halberd in his hand he strode towards the city gate. But before he reached there he thought, "If I wait for them to open the gate they may try to arrest me, so I had better try and get over the wall." So he went and got on the city wall. It was an earth wall faced with bricks, and not very high. He jumped down and landed at the side of the moat. In the moonlight he could see that the water was only a few feet deep. It was then the 10th lunar month, the time when spring is dry, so there was not much water in the moat. He took off his boots, puttees, and socks, and lifting up his clothes he waded through the water to the opposite bank. He remembered that Shuren had given him a new pair of hempen shoes, so taking these out of his bundle he now put them on. Just then he heard the watchman inside the city strike the hour of 4 a.m. He had been very angry, but now he found that his temper had all vanished. He felt no hankering to stay near that place, so he set off at a good pace along the eastern road. He walked until about 5 a.m., when he began to feel tired, and also felt the pain in his legs from the blows he had received some days ago. Just then he saw an old temple in a grove of trees, so he entered, and finding it vacant he lay down to sleep with his bundle as a pillow. He was on the point of closing his eyes when he saw 2 hooked sticks reaching out to catch his clothes. At the same moment 2 men rushed in, seized hold of him, and bound him with cords. One man said, "This man is very fat, so we can send him to our elder brother." Wusong struggled, but could not release himself. The 4 persons took charge of his sword and bundle. They led him off, and took him to a near village. On the way the 4 persons spoke, "See. There is blood on this man. Where can he have come from? He must be a wounded bandit." Wu Song listened to their conversation, but kept quiet. After about a li they came to a straw hut, and pushed Wu Song inside. On one side of the room was a small door leading to another room, where a lamp was burning. The four persons stripped the clothes from Wu Song, and bound him to one of the pillars supporting the roof. Looking upwards, Wu Song saw two human legs hanging from a rafter. He thought, these people are evidently murderers, and they have me entirely in their power. If I had known of this I would rather have admitted my guilt in Mengzhou Prefecture, and submitted to execution, than have such a fate as this. The persons examined Wu Song's bundle, and called out, "Brother and sister-in-law, come here. We have got some first-class booty." A voice in the inner room replied, "I am coming, and will open the bundle." "Leave it alone." Before you could have drunk a cup of tea, the small door opened, and two persons entered. In front was a woman, and behind her a man. They stared at Wu Song, and the woman said, "Is not this our brother?" The man said, "Yes, he is my brother." Wu Song upon looking at them closely recognized the man as Zhang Qing, the market gardener, and the woman was Sun Er Nyang, the night witch. When the four persons saw that Zhang Qing knew Wu Song they hurriedly untied the ropes, and gave clothes for him to dress. They had torn his turban so they found a felt cap for him. Zhang Qing invited Wu Song to go to the inner room, where he saluted him. When he saw the blood on Wu Song's clothes Zhang Qing was surprised, and asked, "What has happened to you?" "That is a long story," said Wu Song. He then recited to them all the experiences he had had since he last met Zhang Qing at the crossroad, and also related how he had been captured in the little old temple in the woods. When they heard all this the four assistants knelt and begged Wu Song for forgiveness, saying that they went to the woods to look for some booty because they had lost all their money in gambling. Then Zhang Qing and his wife both laughed, and said, "We have been anxious for some time that these four assistants should not kill people, but rather get them alive. How could they understand our arrangement? If our younger brother had not been tired 40 people of your sort would not have been able to get access to him." "Well, never mind," said Wu Song. "As these four assistants have no money to gamble I myself will give them some money." He opened his bundle, and divided 10 taels of silver between them. The four rascals thanked him for this. Zhang Qing seeing this also gave them about 3 taels of silver. Zhang Qing said, "My brother, since your departure I have thought that you would escape and come here again. So I instructed my men that they were to take captives alive. As we were afraid that they would kill people, so I did not supply them with swords, but only hooks on sticks with which they could capture men. Just now when I heard that they had captured something valuable I was afraid that they might kill you, so I told them to wait until I had inspected the booty. But still I never imagined that it was really you." "We heard that you had beaten Jiang the door god," said Sun Er Nyang, and whosoever heard the news was quite startled. The merchants from the Kuaiwa forest who passed here could not however give us any news as to what had happened to you after that affair. But you must be very tired just now, so please go to our guest chamber, and take a rest before you tell us all about it." So Wu Song took this advice, and went to sleep. Zhang Qing and his wife prepared food for Wu Song in the kitchen. It was all ready in a short time, and they then waited for Wu Song to eat the same. The following morning when the servants who had not been killed found out what had happened in Colonel Zhang's quarters they did not dare to raise the alarm. It was quite daylight when they went to the prefect's yamen, and gave the information there. The prefect was greatly surprised at the news, and sent men to investigate the case. The reports stated how Wu Song had killed altogether 15 persons, and had written his name in blood on the wall. The police were then instructed to closely watch the city gates, and to search for Wu Song. The next day a report came that 4 men had been killed at the Feiyun pool, and the bodies thrown in the water. He sent an official to investigate that case also, who duly reported that 2 of the men were the official escort for Wu Song, and the other 2 were servants. For 3 days a careful search was made in every house in the city, and for every 10 houses a letter had to be written pledging that the culprit was not hidden there. All this did not furnish any clue however. The prefect also issued orders to all the surrounding counties and villages, giving details of the case, describing Wu Song's appearance and dress, and offering a reward of 3,000 strings of cash for those who might arrest him. Anyone harboring Wu Song would be treated as a fellow criminal. Wu Song stayed with Zhang Qing for 5 days, and heard the rumors and reports from outside sources. Zhang Qing also heard the news, and therefore spoke to Wu Song, "Brother, as you are aware, the officials are giving your case most urgent attention, and are searching every house in the district. I am afraid that they will at last visit this house, and then we shall all be involved. I have found a safe place for you to go to. In fact, I mentioned the place to you some time ago, but I do not know whether you would care to go there." "I have been thinking of the same thing for the last few days," said Wu Song, "and have been aware that I cannot stay here in safety. But now that my only brother is dead, and I have no relatives, so if you know of a safe place, why should I not go there?" "Where is this place?" "It is at the Lianglong mountain in Qingzhou Prefecture. There are my brothers Lu De and Yang Ji, who are at the head of a gang of brigands. The officials at Qingzhou are afraid of interfering with them. If you went there, there would be no danger of your being arrested again, but if you went to any other place there would be that danger. They have frequently sent me letters asking me to join them, but so far I have not been able to do so. I can write a letter stating your abilities, and they would admit you to their band." "What you say is quite true," replied Wu Song. "I had that idea myself, but to my regret I found no opportunity of going there. Now that I have killed these people, I must find a safe refuge, and your plan is an excellent one. If you will write the letter now, I will leave here today." Zhang Qing wrote a letter, handed it to Wu Song, and prepared a meal for the final leave-taking. Sun Er Nyang pointed at her husband and asked, "Why do you ask him to go in this way? If he leaves here he will meet somebody, and be arrested." "Why should I not go?" asked Wu Song. "How do you know that I should be arrested?" "The full details of your case have been published, and are posted everywhere offering a reward for your arrest. Your face is branded with characters, so that on the way you would be detected very easily." "We can put a plaster on his face to cover those characters," said Zhang Qing. Sun Er Nyang laughed. "You are the smartest man in the world, but you have now uttered a very foolish remark. How would a plaster deceive those officials? I have a plan, but I think our brother would not care to try it. I want to escape, so what is there that I would not try?" Sun Er Nyang again laughed. "Well, if I tell you, you must not misunderstand me." "Whatever you say I will do," replied Wu Song. Sun Er Nyang said, 2 years ago a wandering monk passed this way, and I killed him, and made his flesh into dumplings. I keep all his clothing, his iron head ring, his string of beads which were all carved out of human bones, and also his broadswords made of the best steel, with fine fish skin sheaths. Now you can wear these things, and arrange your hair so as to hide the branded characters. There is also a monk's certificate, which will be equal to a talisman for you. His age and appearance were about the same as yours. Would not this be a splendid disguise? You can also adopt his name, and on the road nobody would ask questions. Will you try this?" Zhang Qing clapped his hands to show approval and said, "Wife, a good plan. I have forgotten all about that. Brother, what do you think about it?" "It will do," said Wu Song. "I am only afraid that I should not look like a monk." "Well, let me disguise you and then we shall see," said Zhang Qing. Sun Er Nyang went into another room and brought a bundle. Opening it, she spread out monk's clothes and asked Wu Song to put them on. He looked at them and thought they would fit him nicely. He put the clothes on, rearranged his hair, and encased it with the monk's iron head ring, and donned the string of beads. Both Zhang Qing and his wife applauded, and said that he looked true to life. Wu Song took a mirror, and upon examining himself he burst into laughter. "Why do you laugh so loudly?" asked Zhang Qing. "I am so strange. I never expected to become a monk. Elder brother, please cut my hair." Zhang Qing took the scissors and cut his hair. Wu Song realized that his position was getting serious, so he got his bundle ready for departure. Now please listen to what I say, said Zhang Qing. You had better leave here the silver cups, etc. you took from Colonel Zhang's house, and in exchange for them I will give you silver to cover your traveling expenses. That is a very good suggestion, said Wu Song. He then exchanged the cups for silver, and put it in his belt. He buckled on his 2 knives, and was ready to start. Sun Ernyang handed him the monk's certificate with a cover to carry it in. She asked him to suspend this from his neck, and wear it next to his skin. Wu Song bade them farewell, and Zhang Qing asked him to take every care on his journey. Be sparing with wine, and avoid quarrels with people. Act like a monk. In all transactions avoid haste, or a display of temper, or people will suspect you. When you reach the Lianglong mountain please give us a letter. We shall not be staying here a long time as we may shortly go to that mountain retreat ourselves. Brother. Be careful. Be careful. Give our respects to Luda and Yang Ji. So Wu Song rolled up his sleeves for comfort in walking, and set out with big strides. When he left the crossroads it was the 10th lunar month, and the days were getting short. He had traveled about 16 li when he was close to a high mountain range. It was evening, but as the moon was shining bright he continued his way up to the mountain. When he reached the top of the pass it was about 9 p.m., and he stopped to admire the beauty of the scene in the moonlight. In the silence he heard someone in the forest laughing. He thought, that is strange. This is a very lonely spot, so where can the laughter come from? He walked towards the trees and saw a temple surrounded by fir trees in a cemetery, on the side of the hill. The temple was small with about 10 rooms, and one of the windows was open. Standing at the window and admiring the moonlight view was a Taoist priest who was holding a woman in his arms. This provoked Wu Song's anger, because it was improper for a priest to have a woman in a temple. He got out his broadswords and soliloquized, "These are the best of swords, but now I am going to test your quality." He rolled up his sleeves and sheathed one sword, but held the other sword in his hand. He went to the door of the temple and knocked. As soon as the priest heard this he closed the window. Wu Song picked up a stone and hurled it at the door. A small door at the side opened, and a small acolyte came out and shouted, "Who are you? Why do you come and disturb us at midnight? Why do you knock at the door like this?" Wu Song opened wide his big round eyes and shouted, "Let this stinking acolyte christen my sword." So saying he slashed the boy's head off. The priest instantly appeared on the scene and called out, "Who has dared to kill my acolyte?" He leapt out towards Wu Song brandishing a pair of double-edged swords. Wu Song laughed loudly. "I am quite ready. I do not keep my skill in a box. This is scratching me at the itch." So saying he drew the second sword out of its scabbard and advanced towards the priest. In the bright moonlight their swords flashed in all directions as they fought. One of these will lose his head. Red blood spattered on the ground.